Time to talk the running back position with SI senior fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano for his stardom, sit-em, figure out who you want in your lineups for week 17. And Fabs, let's get to the running backs that should be in lineups this week.
Yeah, start Deandre Swift this week against the Minnesota Vikings. Swift has scored 15 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. And the Vikings, well, they've been terrible against running backs. You know that if you started Alvin Kamara or played against him last week. They gave up 6 touchdowns. It could have been 7. And over 56 fantasy points to Kamara. So Swift is in a smash spot this week. And I also like Malcolm Brown. The Rams offense is an absolute mess right now. Darrell Henderson got put on injured reserve. Cam Akers is dealing with a high ankle sprain, which means Malcolm Brown is going to see the lion's share of the touches against the Arizona Cardinals. They've allowed 16 touchdowns and nearly 24 fantasy points per game to running backs. So based on the volume and the matchup, Malcolm Brown is a pretty nice flex starter this week.
All right, joining Deandre Swift and Malcolm Brown is Darrell Williams and Gus Edwards from the Baltimore Ravens. Now, let's move over to the running backs that should be on the bench, Fabs. Who are you warning fantasy players from starting this week?
I had Mike Davis on this list last week, and he got into the end zone, but his numbers weren't all that great. Now he's got the Saints. And the Saints are playing for the number 1 overall seed in the NFC, while the Panthers are really playing for nothing at this point, just pride and maybe trying to be a sleeper team that could potentially sneak in and knock the Saints out of a high seed in the NFC. But here's the problem. New Orleans has allowed the fewest fantasy points to running backs, including a Week 7 game against Davis, where he had 36 total yards and only 8.6 fantasy points. So despite the fact that the Panthers might want to be the spoiler, the sleeper team this week that go out and knocks off the Saints, this is a bad matchup for Mike Davis. And then Kenyon Drake of the Arizona Cardinals going up against the Rams. Now, I know Drake is a tough player to sit. I understand that. But the matchup is not good. Just one running back has scored more than 17.5 fantasy points against the Rams at home. That was Ezekiel Elliott back in week 1. And just one running back has scored more than 13.5 fantasy points against the Rams at SoFi Stadium since week 4. Overall, the Rams have allowed just 10 touchdowns and the 4th fewest fantasy points to running backs. So despite the fact that there have been some weeks where we loved the Drake, this week, Bill, we hate the Drake.
You can get plenty more of that fantasy football winning analysis from Michael Fabiano and company. Go to si.com/fantasy.